Natasha, great to see you again. Welcome back to Popternative.
It's so good to see you too. Thanks for having me on again.
I gotta check the leaderboard because you're getting up there. Like I think this is
Oh,
like our third or fourth time, right? That
I
we're
think
chatting.
more. I know. God, let me know if I'm in the lead.
It's so cool and to think about because SkyMed, coming back for a fourth season, but it's like that first interview we did, like season one, that's like so crazy to look at, right? Because like the whole your whole mindset now is like completely different because you have the experiences and everything. What do
Totally.
you think has been the most kind of rewarding thing now of being that character for like 3 full seasons specifically?
I think it's just really been an incredible journey growing up with my character. I haven't, ever experienced that on something. Now going into our fourth season, like looking back at who I was when I was 22 playing Hayley, now to 26 playing Hayley, is a really incredible and empowering experience. Just being able to like bring some of my life experience and maturity to now the character who's like growing up with me is really cool.
Medical drama obviously has the kind of medical component, and especially with SkyMed, it's a lot of up in the air and a lot of quick kind of emergencies, and then you also have the drama component of it. And I think we kind of talked a little bit about this as well when you were on a show called Nurses. But like that script to screen journey is really interesting, right? Like, is that where you really see kind of the blend of like the action and the medical component versus kind of the drama and the relationships of the characters? Like, is that script to screen journey, like, do you really see it on the screen, like the script, so to speak? Is that when you really start to see that blend, so to speak?
Definitely, yeah. And I think filming in the elements, like we're filming in Northern Ontario now. And so there's so many moving parts, if it's like, if we're in the middle of a forest and there's like water things like we had the whole mud sequence that took like a day to film last season, and there was rehearsals and there's like ramps being built, and there's just so many fun components on all of the like injuries and adventure, so to speak, that we have in our scripts, and it really takes a village to sort of deliver on all of those things. And we just have an incredible group of people now that we've been working with for a few years. So yeah, it's really fun, and it's really fun to read it. And then like that whole mud sequence I'm gonna speak on again, because I was reading the script. I'm like, okay, Hayley and Crystal get stuck in mud. That's so interesting. Like, I wonder how that's gonna work. And then you show up and we have like 2 days of rehearsals. There's so many moving components. They've built ramps. They're testing the water to make sure there's not any like algae and dangerous things. Like it's so much, and it's so much fun.
Absolutely. That's actually a good segue to my next question. It's almost like you're a pro. You've been on the show many times. You know the basis of my questions. Well, no, because it's interesting because naturally the conversations that you're gonna have with Morgan and your cast versus the writers and directors are gonna be different, right? Because there's different things to kind of talk about. But I want to know when those conversations happen the most. Like, I know you kind of talked about the rehearsal and the preparation and everything, and even talking to the stunt coordinators. But it's like, are there a lot of conversations creatively, like while you're like filming, or is that most of that kind of happen conversation wise before, like with the preparation?
No, I would say it's like while we're filming. I mean, we're getting scripts sort of like a week before we start the next episode. So it's a unique experience for us cast members, because we're essentially like the audience. We're kind of figuring out what's going on as we're filming the show. We have a creative meeting with our incredibly talented showrunner and creator Julie Puckrin before. Like, we each have a one-on-one, and she sort of gives us the lowdown on what our character's arc is going to be this season and what they're going to go through. So we know what's coming, but we don't know the intricacies of like each episode and sort of what's going to happen. So I would say it's a very fast pace moving show with a lot of elements, and we have busy long days, and a lot of the time we're just like in it, and it's the adrenaline of like, okay, now we're doing this, and stunt rehearsal really quick, and then medical rehearsal really quick, and then I'm just kind of like riding this wave of, we have one take to do this because there's like a blood thing and we can only have one shot, and so I'm just like winging it, and it's really fun.
Absolutely. And I do this thing, and if it's one of those if you know situations, people that know me, I like, it's a PD Beats thing. I do this thing called whispering for emphasis. I don't know, it's just like when I get excited about things, but it's not a Natasha Calis Popternative interview unless we talk about a horror movie.
Okay.
And you have a feature film, Sick Puppy, that is going to be at Fright Fest in the UK, which is insane.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to know because, we talked about the possession and everything, and we talked about kind of our mutual love for the genre. But I kind of wanted to talk about the fact that it is a genre that continues to be elevated because there's different ways to scare people and there's different kind of subgenres. So what is it like working in the genre now versus, the possession, where it's like we've seen that kind of evolution with a lot of the subgenres and different ways to scare people?
Ooh, this is a really good question. Sick Puppy is super unique because it's definitely like a deeply disturbing movie with a lot of creative kills and gore and like a disturbing subject matter for diehard horror fans. But it's also it's also like so hilariously quirky and satirical, and it's a dark comedy on relationships. So there's a lot going on. It's like it's campy, but it's like super messed up at the same time, which is a really fun marriage, I think, in the genre.
I want to see it so badly. I saw that post and I was like, oh my God, like you're back in a horror movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was so excited.
Oh, I thank you so much. It was really fun. It's been in the works for a couple years, so I'm excited for it to finally be coming out.
I find it really interesting as well because one thing that I'm noticing about horror movies, and like I'll go to going to see horror movies in the movie theater is like the best. Like one can make an argument that you can't really beat that. Like the big communal component, it's the best.
The crowds, the screens,
the crowds. I also, have a really cool like surround sound system with my home, like with my TV at home as well. But like I think one of the most kind of like underrated or like unsung hero of like horror movies, and I want to know if you agree with me on this, is I'm not like the sound, like not the score, like the sound, right? Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. 100%. It's the like eerie jump scares. It's like loud. It's like too loud.
Or someone flipping on a light switch.
Totally.
Yes.
Yes. 100%.
Like, I feel like that's something too, because, there's a lot of elements, I went to go see Bring Her Back, and like the cinematography was the biggest thing that kind of stood out to me, but it was also like the sound, all these sounds. And I'm just like, oh, you know what I mean? Like it just adds to it.
It does. And I would love nothing more than to be at the premiere in London on, I think it's August 25th, but I'm going to be filming season 4. So I'm not going to be able to be there, but I am going to have major FOMO because I want that crowd, sound theater experience. So
how separate are past things compared to something like Sick Puppy? Like, do you bring mindsets from SkyMed nurses to like a horror movie? They're completely separate once you wrap them, because it's all storytelling at the end of the day.
It's all storytelling. I think that's a really interesting question. I guess so. Like, it's definitely a completely different, energy and mindset that I'm bringing to each sort of character, but I guess it's the same approach. Like I still have my process, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think, again, like speaking to SkyMed and how intense and complicated and intricate some of the medical stunt scenes can be, you're riding on, and you have like one, take to do it. You're riding on such a high frequency of like adrenaline that you have to nail it. And you have a million medical things to think about and all these things that I think that intensity can also be brought into something like Sick Puppy, where it's like so dark and intense and you have to go to like crazy places where it's a similar wavelength.
And I find it kind of interesting too, to kind of add to that, because I guess my filmmaker hat kind of thinks about this, but getting back to SkyMed, I mean, you mentioned like, the mud scene and everything, from a viewer perspective, there's going to be these like big, like there's going to be these scenes that are going to be like maybe like 2-3 minutes with your character. And then we go to the next scene, right? From a runtime perspective.
Right.
But there are some like really big scenes that like, even though we see 2-3 minutes, it's like that could have taken you the whole day or two to film. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, no. So yeah, like there was.
Do they feel like their own movies when those big scenes happen?
100%. There was one episode in particular where we were trapped on the airplane and we were doing a whole bomb sequence. And so essentially the entire episode for my character and the few others that were in the plane, like we were in the plane for the whole episode. Anyways, I say this because we shot it as all one big long essentially play. So we were doing, and it was like, 10, 12 scenes that we were just running all together, because shooting in this small airplane you have to shoot from the cockpit, and then they have to disassemble and like take off a side and then shoot from there. And it's way too complicated to do that like each time. So we just would run like 30, 45-minute takes, and we were doing all of these scenes over and it was so exhausting. And it definitely felt like we were, just doing a, what do they call it? A bottle episode.
Yeah. But it's so crazy. It's just so funny to me. I spoke to I remember I spoke to Rebel Wilson about a movie recently, and she said she had to do some kind of like stunt for a Pitch Perfect movie, and it was like a 55-second sequence in the film, but it took her like 3 months of training. Like, it's crazy.
It's so crazy.
Yeah, it is a crazy thing. And I do want to ask, because I think SkyMed is like the perfect kind of show for this, but it's like all these characters that we see in SkyMed over the seasons in their own way are lost and figuring things out, whether it's like with their job, whether it's with their family and friends, that they're all doing kind of self-reflection and everything. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, from an acting storytelling perspective, what do you think about that from a process point of view? Like, is it more fun or more challenging to play these lost characters, figuring out, taking it day by day? Because from the viewer perspective, they don't know they're lost. So I always found that interesting.
That is interesting. I think at the end of the day, whoever has it all figured out and knows what's going on? Like, we're all doing this life thing for the first time collectively. And so I think it just adds a natural element to acting and to your character and to the storytelling, where like nobody has it all figured out, So it's like when you're playing a character that you're also, they also are figuring out, it just adds, just like a grounding, I think, element to the performance.
100%. And to kind of add to that as well, you have different seasons. There's different kind of, focuses on your character. Like, you'll get the scripts and there's the overall kind of SkyMed storyline, right? Of like what's happening in the season, but then there's your character specifically. How do you balance that? Like, especially with like season 4, do you have questions for both? Are you thinking of like mainly your character? Are you thinking about the whole kind of storylines that maybe your character's not in? Like, I'm just curious about that preparation. That's interesting to me.
That is interesting. I think I just mostly focus on my character and like what she's going through, because, like in real life, you're only really like there's a lot of separation between, maybe like relationships, other relationships or whatever that maybe my character wouldn't necessarily know about because I'm not close with, those characters. And so like, I try to mostly just focus on what she's going through and just like sort of being selfish in that way. Yeah. But obviously if the story has like, if I should know about it or if there's something going, like obviously I'm going to pay attention to that. But yeah, I typically just sort of focus on Hayley.
Absolutely. And so happy for you and the cast. I mean, you're going to go film season 4 soon, which is amazing. And then Sick Puppy at Fright Fest in the UK in August. So many amazing things. So good to see you again. Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and congrats for like everything that you have going on. You're absolutely crushing it. And
I really appreciate that. That is, I appreciate that. Your Instagram account is just your name, if people want to keep up to date with everything, right? It's just Natasha Calis.
Yeah, just Natasha Calis. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative for previous episodes. Until next time, this is Natasha and Petey Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.